Hey, what's up to everybody out there? Welcome to another edition of the Roundtable Talk. I am your host, C Money, and in today's episode, we're just going to be talking about current events and current topics that is going on around the world, around the United States, or just around here in South Florida area. Um, as you all know, there has been another assassin attempt on President Donald Trump, and this was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner that was happening a couple of days ago. And from what I saw in the news, the guy is a black guy, well, light skinned black guy. He could be mixed, he could be, from another country or foreigner, but from what I saw of the picture, he is black. So my thing on this is now they're trying to tighten up security. And then what they was talking about is basically they was talking about how he got into, he checked into a hotel and they didn't check his bags at the hotel. And I'm like, are you serious? First off, they are trying to now tighten up security at these political events and stuff like that. Y'all should have been doing that. When these can't, even if you're just a candidate for the presidency seat, you should know that anything that's dealing with the government and politics, you need to have tightened security. Like it's like even if it's just the governor of Florida, or it's just a mayor of Miami, or it's just a congresswoman or a congressman that is coming to that is having an event. You need to have tightened security because anybody in politics is a target for a violence. They may target the mayor of Miami because they don't like the tactics of what the mayor's got going on. They may have targeted the congressman because of what they don't like that they're doing, and they probably saying you did this or you did that, and now they're gonna target it. Remember back when when the man tried to assassinate Donald Trump at his near his golf course near his West Palm Beach home, and they got him and stuff. It's just and then the man who tried to shoot him at a political rally, and I'm like, and then now with this one, you know, they're trying to figure out how he got through the security measures. I say it's easy to get through security, you know, it's easy to get through a lot of these areas because you got to realize, even though you have tightened security, there are ways. Just like I believe, and I'm not saying this, and allegedly, I'm quite sure there are ways to get inside that White House without, you know, with even though they got tightened security, there's ways because you realize you give tours of the White House, you know, and the tours of the White House, anybody could be a threat in the White House, or targeted for the White House. Not saying that it's happened, because who knows what has happened in the history of the White House. There's probably been several things that went down in the White House that we don't even know about because they don't show it on the news. Just like, there's been a lot of attempts for a lot of threats for people, and they was talking about how a lot of the other threats from other politicians have faced the surface too, not just the threats on the president or assassin. Remember, they said it was one of the governors or congressmen or something that somebody got into his house and lit up his house and set fire to his house. And remember the guy, I forgot his name, the one that was that got assassinated at the school, and we did an episode about it. Yeah, a lot of these things y'all realize, because these political events that they be having, they don't have tightened security, and even if they do, depending on where you're at. Just like they was in a ballroom, and they was probably in a ballroom at a hotel, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the whole story of the president's, the little dinner or whatever they was having, but it looks like they said it was in a ballroom. So I'm quite sure it was in a ballroom somewhere at a hotel, because the ballroom at the White House is being renovated or whatever you call it. So it's probably they was at a ballroom in a hotel. So a hotel, you can only have so much to where you have people living there. Let's say I booked my room at the hotel, and then they decide to have a presidential luncheon, or they had to have a special event where they had to have tight security. Yeah, you're gonna have to tell people you can't go this way, you can't go that way. Just like um and I think we talked about this UFC that just recently came, and we talked about how the president liked to come to UFC with, and UFC they have it every year at the Kaseya Center, which is home of the Miami Heat basketball team. And he comes there, and when he steps in the building, they stop traffic everywhere to where people can't go nowhere, and people have to stand still, like it's like you are like he's an animal, and you have to stand still while the animal moves so he won't attack you and stuff like that. And I'm like, and then they was talking about how he got the guns in the hotel and stuff because hotels don't check bags and stuff like that. Honestly, I was like, y'all serious? That's invasion of privacy. You know, I've been in several businesses where they have to check bags to where, they have to make sure you don't have anything or whatever, just like airports. But I would go to a hotel and I would say, don't check my bag, because I went to I went to a family fun center, and I don't remember. Oh yeah, I did an episode of it. It was around the very first time I started doing hotspots in South Florida. If you don't remember, just go way back years ago. I went to a place, and this was recently now. I went to a place called Extreme Action Park. I know I did an episode of it. I'm probably gonna do another episode of it because it was one of the few episodes that I did when I first started doing hotspots in South Florida. And I actually recently, the last time I went there, I had a bag and I had stuff in my bag. I had a little bag, a little tote bag, because sometimes when I go out, I bring like a bag with wipes and hand sanitizer and napkins and stuff, just in case, and and a little mini disinfectant spray, because sometimes when you go somewhere, you want to spray something down and disinfect it, especially if you're on a bus or something like that, you want to disinfect it for disease and stuff. So I bring a little bag, and they had end up checking my bag, and sometimes I'd be like skeptical of what I be having in my bag. I don't have nothing incriminating in my bag, but you be going in these places, and they had to check my bag, because I went inside a family fun center, and I guess for security purposes, and this was probably around the time it was busy. And they have, because certain family fun centers, you can just walk in and go play video games. I've did it at Dave and Buster's and a lot of these other places. You just walk in and have fun. They don't check your bags and stuff, because I feel like the invasion of privacy. And then that's what they was talking about it on the news with the man. And they were saying how one of the men that did the deadliest mass shooting in America, how he had a whole bunch of rifles and stuff, and he checked into the hotel and they didn't check his bag. I say, why would people check the bags of people checking into the hotels? To me, that's invasion of privacy. We have a right as American citizens, and now and I think they're gonna start thinking that now we need to start rethinking baggage checks at all locations. Like, if you walk into a grocery store, we gotta check your bag when you go in the grocery store, because you might want to come in here and shoot up everybody in the grocery store. You need to check your bag when you go inside the church, because you want to go in there and kill everybody in the church. It's the Lord's. It's a place of worship for the Lord, but still, let's check your bag. You might have a rifle in your bag. And I'm like, I'm starting to think that there are certain things that I think they need to just leave alone. Like, I honestly feel, let's say, an airplane, yes, we do need to check bags and stuff in the airplane, because you're high above the air and high altitude, and you could have anything in you, and, bam, we're gone. 100-something people or 50-something people are gone. But in certain areas, like, I don't need you checking my bag when I'm coming inside of a grocery store, because what if I have something in my bag I don't want you to see? And not saying that it's a gun or nothing like that, but still, I have, women have personal products in they bag. It may be that time of the month and they need the little personal stuff. Women have these things, and I look at it as if you have to understand that there are certain places, like even with church, I do not want to be checked in church if I bring a bag or something like that, and if I gotta walk through a metal detector at a church. Honestly, I don't need to be at that church, because that means y'all not providing safety for you. Y'all not thinking that your congregation is safe. Not saying that it shouldn't happen, but I believe there's certain places that you don't need to be security checked. Like schools, you need to be security checked, because I've seen recently that these kids they're putting threats on schools, and there have been bomb threats, and a lot of these kids, they come into schools with guns and stuff. And I get why some of the kids are doing it, because some of these kids, and I've seen TV shows about it that did episodes about it, where kids are getting bullied at school, so they go buy a gun, or they go get their mom and dad's gun, and they bring it to school and say, the next person that bully me, they gonna get it, pow pow pow. Excuse me. And they want to protect themselves, because it's hard out here now these days. Nobody's safe, because there's supposed to be three places that you're supposed to be safe: your home, your school, and your church. And your home ain't really safe, because look how many break-ins and killings that going on, and there's families that's killing families out there. Schools ain't safe, because how many kids are bringing guns into school now, when they have to tighten security and stuff like that and everything. And the church, good lord, how many, like that guy that went inside the church a couple of years ago and killed 9 people in a church, and you're like, that's not safe, and that's the 3 most safest places you're supposed to be, because in school you're supposed to have security guards and policemen, and I think the security guards should be trained more, and should be able to have weapons and get paid more, because them security guards here in Miami, we got the security guards with the green shirts that say school security in the back. I don't know how they is in other cities, but here in Miami they got the little green shirts that say school security on the back, and they just walk around with just telling the kids get off the grass, or just kind of get no. But I think school security should be tightened to where now these school security should be armed security guards. Armed school security, because school security, they just somebody that they hire off the street to walk around and say get the class, and that's it. They don't hire them to train them for situations like if a mass shooter come inside the building, because every school has a on duty police officer, because Miami-Dade public schools has school police. I don't know how other counties do it, because there are cities that they just, when school is in session, they just have a regular police officer assigned to a school. Miami, they have actual school police, which is a officer who probably used to be a police officer or was a police officer, but they got assigned to the school police department, because they sit at the schools, and they protect the schools, and there'll probably be one. They used to have it when I did an episode at of North Day Middle. Remember, I did an episode a couple of weeks ago of my old school, North Day Middle. They had I want to say trailer building, which is kind of like a portable, and they had a police officer that actually lived at North Day, and this was before they started adding the policemen, because that was back in the 90s. This was before they started adding police to the schools, because now every school, including elementary and high schools, from elementary to high school, every school, except I think for the charter schools, I think the charter and private schools, I don't think they have actual police officers. I just think that during the school zone times, they have police out there to watch for the people, in speeding and stuff like that. But they did have a police officer that was scared, that lived out there, and he lived in a I want to say it was a trailer home, but I think it was a portable that was made into a home, and he actually lived out there. And I used to always wonder, what? Like, really? They have a police officer that lived out there? And, I didn't see the little portable or whatever when I did my video last time, but I knew where it was, and I should have probably mentioned that. But my thing is that because of that, I honestly, like, I never got it when I was younger, because when you're young, you be thinking there's a police officer that live here. Why? But then as I grew older and I became an adult, I see why. He was a police officer that was protecting the school, and at that time they didn't really have police officers at the school. Back then in the 80s and 90s and the 70s and 60s, if something happened at the school, you had to call the police, and the police had to come out. Now, if something happened at the school, the police officer probably has a walkie-talkie that's stationed at the school. So anything they hear is, because the schools have walkie-talkies, and they probably have their own walkie-talkie that is stationed and connected to the police department, and then they have a walkie-talkie that is connected to the school, because the schools have to have their own walkie-talkie, and then they have to listen to everything. And well, so you know, back then you didn't have police officers. You had to call 911 and get the police out there. Now you have your own police officers at the school, where if they need more help, if it's just one person that's being ruly, you can go and arrest them and put them in your car and take them to jail. But if it's like a whole situation like the Parkland shooting at Marjorie Douglas Thurman High School, yeah, you have to bring in a whole team. But my thing about it is that a lot of things, I think they need to leave alone. Like, I admit, when you're going into a venue, especially for an event and stuff, you need to have security. Like these private events, because I've seen them. Like when I went to Key West, there was a private event going on at one of the houses, and people were just walking right in, and I saw people dressed up and everything. People just walking right in, and I'm like, it's that easy just to walk into an event? Don't have nobody securing the place. I know they have somebody checking to see if you're on the list for this event and stuff like that, but because back then, security used to be those men in suits that walk around, and you didn't know they was, security. They had on like the same type of clothes. They had on like a black, dress suit, and walk around looking like they men in black and stuff like that. And it was like, yeah, but now you have to have policemen. Cause me and a friend of mine was doing a business venture, and it's a friend from college. And one of the business ventures that we was going to do was opening up a little nightclub, because one of the spots there was a spot here in Miami called Escape Zone, which was a family fun center, and it was housed at the Northside Shopping Center, because they had several locations. They had one in Broward County, and they had one up north. I think it was in Tampa, if I'm not mistaken, or it was in another city in the northern part of Florida. And they had one here at Northside. And on one of the nights, because on Friday or Saturday nights, I forgot, one of the nights, they turned the because it was a part of the flea market, the Liberty Flea Market, and they had an entrance that goes directly, because it was on the second floor of the flea market. So they had an entrance from the flea market where when you're shopping, you can go directly into the escape zone. And then they had it when the flea market closed, they closed the little gates, the little shutters down from the entrance to the flea market. And then the entrance from the outside was like stairs that went up. And they had one of the nights, I don't remember if it was a Friday or Sunday night, they had one of the nights where they say they turned, because they had a skating ring, it had bounce houses, it had arcade games and things to do. And they was like, one of the things when they went at night, they would turn the skating ring into the dance floor, because that's one of the places where I kind of learned how to skate, even though I haven't skated in years, but I was learning how to skate because I went there one day with one of my friends from college, and they turned the skating ring into a dance floor, and they say they take down the bounce houses and they leave the games on for the people to play, and it becomes like a nightclub. And then when they was telling us, oh, you could do the same thing, because we was going to do a nightclub, they say you have to have inside security, meaning like a bouncer and stuff that walks around the club on the inside, and then you have to have an off-duty police officer downstairs, meaning that they have to have an off-duty police officer that sat outside, and you had to pay them. So they was giving us the price range. It was like 20, and this was back in like the mid 2000s. This was around the time, like when I was in college and stuff, we was doing a business venture. I was already doing business ventures at the time, but it's just an extra business venture that me and a friend wanted to go in with, and we was going to go through with it, but we was looking at everything and stuff, and I was like, yeah, because now these days you just can't, and they were saying you just can't have security, and even if you have security, it has to be security that is trained in stuff like this. You just can't hire somebody off the street and say, hey, you're gonna be my security guard. No, now these days you gotta have security guards that's licensed, and you gotta at least have somebody that is licensed with a weapon, just in case anything happen, they're trained into doing things. Because a lot of these clubs, they just used to hire bouncers that was buff, and like how they did with Terry Crews and Soul Plane, when Terry Crews was the bouncer on that little the club that was on the plane, and he because he was muscle bound, and he had the muscles and everything, they hired him. And, that's what they used to do back in the day with these clubs. They used to just get muscle bound guys, big guys that know how to handle situations in club. Now these days You got to hire people that is armed and certified, with a gun and with a weapon and stuff like that. So anything going on, hey, they pow pow pow, things like that. I haven't really been in the club in like years, so a lot of these clubs. And one of the I've been to a club and I've seen that they have outside security, and with outside security they do have to have, they have to be armed, just in case anything happen. But I haven't been to a club in years, so I wouldn't know how that is. But if you've been to a club, let me know how the club thing is now with security and stuff like that. Because back then, they don't have like that. They have like that one security guard that bees outside, to make sure the parking lot is safe or things like that is going around. But now these days, you gotta have to. And when they was talking about the hotel situation that they don't check bags at hotels, I'm like, yeah, they shouldn't check bags at hotels, because why should you be checking somebody's bag at a hotel that they may have, because a lot of these people, there's 5 reasons why you're at a hotel. One is because you're on vacation and you want to enjoy, your vacation. So you may have stuff in your bag that may be, a little bit too, personal, to where it may be some sexual stuff in your thing. Another thing is you might have something, you might be there for business. So you might have business stuff, paperwork and computers and documents and stuff. So you might have stuff in there that's for work, You might be, a businessman that has to have a whole bunch of documents and stuff. And you might have documents that, is personal and nobody is supposed to see these documents, and stuff like that. Another one is, hey, you're here for a night because you and your girlfriend or you or your wife, like, like a lot of people, they don't live on their own. They live with family members, or they live with, got a roommate and stuff. So you and your girl might want to get a room for a night at a romantic hotel and want to spend a romantic evening. So you might have some sexual toys and stuff like that or whatever. Or, you get put out of your house and you have nowhere to go, so you rent a hotel room for a night, just to stay in a hotel and stuff like that. Things like that, And I look at it as if, and there's probably another reason. I just didn't want to keep going on. So, and I look at it as if, now y'all are going to start looking at it. Yeah. Now we're gonna start, because I don't know if I told you. I remember when Corona, when the virus hit, COVID-19 hit, a lot of these hotels started getting restricted on their hours. Because back then hotels, you walk in the lobby, you can go to the rooms and stuff like that, and you can hang out and stuff like that. They started having it where now I've seen hotels that say you can't have guests in your room, you can't have people, you can't have guests after 10 a.m. It was one hotel that was here in Miami. They said you can't have guests after 10 o'clock. And then a lot of these hotels, like I've seen it at several Marriotts, where they'll close the front doors, they'll lock it at 12 o'clock. And I'm like, why you can't have guests in your hotel room? Ain't that's the purpose of a hotel? I understand not to have 20 and 30 people and you can't have a party in your room, but what if you visited somebody, just like, I was visiting Warner Robins, and you're going to tell me I can't have people in my room and I'm visiting, so where I'm supposed to entertain my guests? Let's say you having a family reunion and, you tell the family, hey, I want to have a little cocktail event in my room. You got a nice suite room with a room and a living room, and like Star Island, you have a place like at Star Island where you have a living room, a bedroom, a kitchen and everything, and you say, hey, we having a family reunion. I want to have a family get together at my hotel. I got a kitchen. Somebody can probably make some drinks and stuff. And then you tell me I can't have guests in my room and I'm visiting and I'm here for a family reunion. Come on now. Like, this is ridiculous. And to me, I feel like, and then you're going to want to check my people for their bags. I'm like, dude, like, that's invasion of privacy. But I get why they're doing it, because I feel like if Trump is going to be speaking at a hotel, yes, that day that he's speaking, if they know he's coming, everybody who checks in, they need to make sure that their bags are being screened. Because I remember they told everybody when he went to the UFC fights, they was telling people there, and I've seen it online, they was telling the guests too, like the guests, they can't, because certain concerts, they tell people, and I've seen it because a lady did a video about it at, I think it was somebody's concert or something, and they had it to where they was telling them you can't be like. And I've seen it at certain concerts where they'll have pouches to put your phones in, and you can't have your phone out at the concert. And they have it to where you can only take your phone out when you go outside the building to make a phone call or something like that, or you can only take your phone out when you leave the building. Like, they have restrictions, and I've seen that online where they'll tell people at these concerts, hey, you can't have this, you can't have that. And I've seen where they tell with the UFC, you can't bring bags and stuff like that or whatever because Trump is here. And I get when he's at an event venue, yeah, you do check bags, but you can't expect every hotel to be checking bags when people come into these buildings, regardless, because who's to say there's an event going on in South Florida like the Ultra Music Fest or something like that, and then now they're going to tell the hotels you got to check everybody's bag when they go? No. Because if that happens, a lot of these events are going to start saying, well, we're not going to come back to Miami because they're checking out guest bags, and our guests don't want to come if they got to get searched just to go to an event. So a lot of businesses are going to lose money. And a lot of these hotels is going to lose money because they're going to feel like, oh, so now you're checking out guests' bags because now we can't do this and do that and stuff like that. And now every time our guests come in, and the guests are starting to complain to us, like, let's say, because a lot of these events, they rent out these hotels. Like I remember in in May for Memorial Weekend used to be well, it's not really pride, but it used to be where they used to have pride events for the local home gay and lesbian communities, the LGBTQ communities. And a lot of people used to come in from out of town, and it used to be where downtown was like they had different hotels that was there. They called it, I forgot what the name they called it. If you know, comment. And they used to have it where they used to rent out the rooms. They used to do all the rooms, like rent out the rooms. They buy up all the rooms. That's what I meant to say. They buy up all the rooms. And I've seen this not just with the LGBTQ community. I've seen it with other events as well too. Like a lot of events, because with people, they rent out these rooms, and then they go and they sell them to their guests on their site. And sometimes they get a blockage. They block out the rooms where they get like, okay, 20 rooms. Because they was doing that with my grandma's funeral, and they was telling everybody, here's the prices for it. Because they had two hotels when my grandma passed away a couple of years ago, and we went to Port St. Lucie. They had two hotels, and the hotels was like too expensive. And I was like, are you crazy? So I ended up going to a hotel in Fort Pierce, which is the Motel 6, because I had to do 3 rooms, because it was me, my family, and stuff like that. We did 2 rooms, but then when we got there, we had to do a 3rd room because we had another person with us. And I was like, nah, I'm not finna go pay 100 and something a night for a room, and we got to do like 2 or 3 rooms. No. So I said, okay, I seen a room that was like 50, and it was just for a funeral. We was just there for a funeral. It wasn't like we was there for like a family reunion and stuff like that. We were just for a funeral. So it's like, yeah, we gonna go there, stay the night, because when the funeral was over, because we went and checked into the room and then got dressed and went to the funeral, and said we didn't want to go back home because Port St. Lucie and Fort Pierce is not far from Miami. That's like a 2, maybe 3 hour drive, and that's it. You're not going far. But we was like, no, we just want to go there for the night and whatever. But this was during COVID time, so this was like 2021, I believe, during COVID. But yeah, and I was like, and with that, it got to the point where, okay, it is what it is and stuff. But at the same time, they block out the rooms and they sell them to people online. Now, they didn't block out the rooms for the funeral. They just gave us the prices. But they block out the rooms, and then they sell it to their guests online and stuff like that, to where you get a price, or, you get a room there and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's fine and stuff like that. But to me, they don't check people's, why would you want to check somebody's bags and stuff like that? I don't get it. I understand if it's a busy weekend event, and things of people are coming in, and then if the people start complaining about they're checking bags at the hotel, and they start complaining to the event personnel, then the event people are going to start saying, well, we're not going to use this hotel no more because you're checking our guests' bags, and our guests don't feel safe because you're checking our bags and things like that or whatever, because this and that and this and that. So they're going to start taking their business elsewhere. So I believe that's one of the reasons why these hotels are not going to be checking bags. And they were saying, yeah, they don't check them, because they were saying that on the news, that they don't check hotel bags at these places. But I'm like, why should they? This is invasion of people's privacy. But let me know what y'all think in the comments. And you can also email me roundtable305@yahoo.com. Let me know what y'all think about this. Do you think that hotels should start checking people's bags when they check into these hotels? Not, and it is not just because of the Trump thing, but you think that they should be charged. I don't think they should. Like if somebody important coming to the hotel and having something, yes, check everybody's bag that's coming in, just in case no nutcase is coming in trying to, assassinate somebody or something like that. I agree with that. But as far as regular, I'm just checking in to go somewhere. No. And not only that, yes, you do need to tighten up security when not just Trump, but these president and elected officials and government officials are out and about. Yes, you do need to tighten up security. But let me know how y'all feel about this. Email me, roundtable305@yahoo.com. Also comment at the bottom of this page. And I thank y'all for watching this episode. And as always, stay safe, stay blessed, stay hydrated. And of course, I'll see y'all in the next episode. Take care.